In case you missed Monday's show, unions won big as a report from The Nation magazine details how Democrats, for the first time in decades, overturned right-to-work laws in Michigan. These laws have been passed for the purpose of gutting unions, an essential coalition in the Democratic Party. It was a huge win for unions and a huge win for Democrats. Check out that show by clicking on the link above. But that's not all. On today's show, we'll discuss another huge win, this time in Wisconsin. Stay tuned. I'm going to go into what a gerrymander is because there's a very excellent video by Vox to just remind people, and it's important just to remind people what a gerrymander is and what we're talking about. But this is an article. It says Wisconsin picks up new legislative maps that would end years of GOP gerrymandering. And it says, under legal pressure to address Wisconsin's Swiss cheese and oddly shaped districts, the legislature approved redrawn maps. And here is the video I wanted to talk about that goes into what gerrymandering is. I think a lot of people may not really understand what a gerrymander is, but this is called The History of Gerrymandering. This is from Vox's YouTube channel. And it goes into what gerrymandering is and it says the man who rigged America's election maps. Again, guys, these links will be found in our Mastodon, mastodon.vtip.me/@what-you-missed. But I'm going to play this. I'm going to stop it. I don't want to get a copyright strike. And actually, let me just say this again, because I always have to remind people that if you see one of these videos on YouTube and you see an abrupt cut where part of the video is missing, you can go to stream.vtip.me and you'll be able to see the entire video. It's usually because I've got a copyright hit where I had to remove a section of the video that I'm playing because there are algorithm pulled up that this is a video that belongs, that's copyrighted for someone else, and I had to edit it out. So I just want you to be aware that if you see some kind of a jumped cut or something and you don't see the video that I say is going to play, that's what's happened. Go to stream.vtip.me, look for this video, and you'll be able to see it in its entirety. But let me play this video for you.
In Congress. But in North Carolina, the election results were really weird. These squares represent all the voters in North Carolina. They were voting for these 13 seats in Congress. About half voted for Republicans, and about 48% voted for Democrats. So you might think of the 13 congressional seats, maybe Democrats would have won 6 seats, and Republicans would have won 7. But no, Democrats only won 3 of 13 seats, way less than half. This imbalance was because North Carolina's congressional districts had been gerrymandered. It means that these voters had been grouped into districts very strategically with the goal of benefiting one party. Gerrymandering has pretty much always happened in America. That's because every 10 years, the political districts are redrawn. And in most cases, those new lines get drawn by whoever holds power in state government at the time. That's what happened in 2010. Republicans won control of lots of state governments and redrew the political lines to favor themselves. And over the next few years, redistricting helped them hold on to almost all those states. This shifted the balance of power. And it turns out behind a lot of this was one guy.
Usually the voters get to pick the politicians. In redistricting, the politicians get to pick the voters.
This is Thomas Hofeller, the mapmaker who helped Republicans gerrymander districts over the last decade. When Hofeller died in 2018, his daughter found thousands of his emails and files, which she shared with activists. The files show that Tom Hofeller's fingerprints are all over the way America's political maps look today. But North Carolina was his masterpiece. And if you want to understand why gerrymandering is such a big problem in the US, that's a good place to start.
Okay, and for us, this is going to be a good place to end because I don't want to go too deep. If you want to watch the full video on, again, Vox's YouTube page. Link will be in the Mastodon, but that is sort of the groundwork behind gerrymandering that I wanted to get. I wanted to lay this groundwork before we start talking about it, because it's such an important issue that I don't know that how many people really can appreciate the power of gerrymandering and how it is a state can become ultra conservative and there seems to be no way to break it free. Like, how does a Texas become conservative when it had been a swing state for such a long time? How does a Florida become a conservative, red state when it had been a swing state for so long? That has to do with partisan gerrymandering, and people don't like to talk about it. They like to talk about a whole lot of different things. This guy Ron DeSantis talks about people are coming here because of our great laws and all this kind of business. No, it's gerrymandering. That's why you're there. But this is an article. This is out of ProPublica. Megan O'Matz, February 16th, again. And it says Wisconsin's dinosaur-shaped legislative map could soon be history. Also, let me just remind you, Wisconsin is another one of those blue states that Hillary Clinton lost. Donald Trump won in 2016. It is essential for Democrats to win it. It is the Rust Belt. It is the Union, base. It is Detroit. Is Michigan. Wisconsin. I believe. I believe one senator is not is a Republican out of Wisconsin. I think Patty Murray is a Wisconsin senator. Don't quote me on that. But it is, it has to remain solidly blue, and Democrats have to win it in elections. And it has to remain a place where Democrats, and in particular unions, are able to thrive and grow and be an example for the rest of the country. So, continuing on, the curiously drawn district and other oddities associated with the state's extreme gerrymandering would be erased in the new voting maps passed this week by the Wisconsin legislature. The state Supreme Court decision finally forced Wisconsin Republicans to cede an advantage they had enjoyed for more than a decade, with maps that made the state one of the nation's foremost examples of gerrymandering. Right? So the video I just showed a moment ago, Vox, they talked about North Carolina. North Carolina is still a mess. But the same thing, what happened in North Carolina is what happened in Wisconsin. The same thing, right? Just let me go back for a moment. The Supreme Court says that the federal courts do not have a role, and it has to be on the state level. The state courts have a role that they can play. But the Supreme Court said that the federal courts have no role in gerrymandering, in partisan gerrymandering. Racial gerrymandering, the federal courts have a role. Partisan gerrymandering, they do not. So what happens is the Republicans and Democrats try to load up the high court, the Supreme Court in the state. Every state has its own Supreme Court. It tries to load up the Supreme Court with, you guessed it, conservative or liberal / progressive judges. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, this kind of gerrymandering stuff, it always goes to the high court. And the high court always ends up, or not always, but since the ruling by the court, has always made a decision on whether the gerrymandered maps are gerrymandered for partisan purposes or not. And since the 2010s to today, or certainly since last year, the fight on the state level has been in the courts, particularly the Supreme Court. What happened in North Carolina is the Supreme Court had one judge over what they needed. So, the tie, I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say it's a 5-4 court. So it was 5-4 in North Carolina for progressives. A judge, I believe, retired. The Democrat or the progressive or liberal judge retired. And I don't know if it's voted or appointed. It was probably voted in. A conservative judge was voted in. As soon as that happened, the Republicans ran to that court and wanted to change the maps so that they favored Republicans, because Democrats had done that before. They had saw a partisan gerrymander. The court went liberal. The court, as soon as that judge was seated, they went in North Carolina and said that these are gerrymandered. They're against our state constitution. The court agreed, and they changed the map so that it was less gerrymandered, more in favor of Democrats. Now here it is. Last year, I believe it was, in North Carolina, the Supreme Court judge that was on the liberal side retired, and they got in a new conservative judge that the GOP had pushed. That judge, the GOP immediately went to that judge. The Supreme Court said, we've got a partisan gerrymander. They immediately said, GOP, go ahead and write new maps, right? That happened in North Carolina. In Wisconsin, the same thing. If you've watched this video, I did one early this year on the channel about Propublica. I'll actually put a link at the end of this video, because I don't know how to, I could probably put it in here. But anyway, the Supreme Court judge, and it was a bitter fight, right? In Wisconsin, the Supreme Court judge who won was a progressive, flipping the Supreme Court liberal. So immediately, what did they do? Democrats immediately ran to the Supreme Court and said, we've got gerrymandered districts here, Judge. We want to throw it out and write all new districts. And of course, the more progressive, the more Democratic leaning Supreme Court agreed and forced the legislature to draw new maps. And it is a significant win, because the gerrymander, as that video indicated, you could win 50-50, you could even win 60-40, and yet somehow, because of gerrymandering, still end up in the minority on the state and on the in the legislature, the state legislature. And that means you can't pass laws. It's a mess. So the governor is a Democrat, Tony Evers. So it goes on to say the Senate and the Assembly voted to adopt voting maps drawn by Tony Evers, a Democrat. Evers said a week ago that he would sign his redistricting plan into law if passed unchanged by the legislature, and proponents of fairer maps have encouraged him to do so. By the way, just as a side note here, the Republicans were so outraged at the win by the flipping of the Supreme Court, and knowing that she ran on doing something about these maps, that they were trying to impeach her before she could make a decision. Fortunately, the speaker and others came to their senses and decided that was not a good move, and decided instead to, move forward with doing what they needed to do. Surrender, I guess you could say. But let me go on and continue on. Again, reading from Propublica. The new design resolves many of the irregularities in the current electoral maps, chief among them the, quote, Swiss cheese appearance that stranded some constituents in segments detached from the rest of their district. One of the more obvious examples of partisan artifice was in the northwest corner of the state, in the 73rd Assembly District, where the GOP had strategically added Republican areas and subtracted Democratic ones in a plan enacted in 2022. Residents joked the contours came to resemble a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The maneuver was successful. That year, a Republican won the seat, which had been held by Democrats for 50 years. The new map completely redraws that district and others. The legislature will be up for grabs, Republican Assembly Speaker Robin Vos said from the floor on Tuesday, the day the vote was taken. In an unusual, magnanimous gesture, Vos said, "Pains me to say it, but Governor Evers gets a huge win today." This is another video just to highlight what the news media is saying in Wisconsin. Again, if you end up seeing this, a hard cut here, where the video is no longer playing and no longer missing, you can go to stream.vtip.me where you can see the full video. But here it is.
Voting map could be coming to an end.
Today, lawmakers passed a new map drawn by Governor Evers. During debate on the bill, Republicans say they felt this was their last best option. But Democrats overwhelmingly voted against the bill after new provisions were added.
I'm going to vote for these maps because the process that's underway in the Supreme Court certainly doesn't appear that it's going to take our arguments seriously.
You can claim all you want that this is the governor's map, but it's the governor's map with some extra language added.
Those provisions added by the Senate earlier in the day would delay the new maps from taking effect until after the November election.
Governor Evers pledged to sign the new maps, but that provision now has some Democrats wanting him to reconsider. CBS 58's Adam Reif live in our...
Okay, I don't want to go into all of the politics in the state with regard to this, but you know, again, it's not unusual for not everybody's happy about these maps, but it is a huge improvement over where they had been just, a few years ago. So so that is the big news. That is the big story coming out of both Wisconsin and coming out of Michigan. Huge stories, big stories, important stories, and stories that I don't want you to miss because we need inspiration to continue fighting. We need to know that the poll numbers, oh my God, the poll numbers, Biden's poll numbers, et cetera, et cetera. We need something to hang our hat on to make us go out there and want to vote and want to continue to fight. And know this, we are gaining ground. Democrats are improving. It's going to be a hard fight. We lost a lot of ground during the Obama years, and we have to work really hard. Also, Simon Rosenberg, I played, I think, some of him the other day, the last time I did a video, I think on Wednesday or on a Monday. He has this site called the Hopium Chronicles, which I think is funny. And, he talks about how strong the Democrats are, and don't be fooled by these polls, how strong Joe Biden is and how negative Donald Trump is, almost unprecedented in history. How negative, how people absolutely not just will not vote for him, but fear him. And I'm talking about Republicans. And I'm talking about, in some cases, Republican voters who voted for Trump. Sometimes 2 times they voted for him, and they are not, very frightened about what he could bring forward. Unfortunately, they probably would vote for Nikki Haley, who would be more in the line of a Mitt Romney or a Sununu or a rest of these guys who were attacking union rights, right? And we saw in that reporting. So, but he goes on to say that the negative partisanship is a factor here. And what Joe Biden needs to do, stop focusing on how unpopular Joe Biden is, and we need to focus on how historically unpopular, Donald Trump is. So Donald Trump, who is now out selling sneakers after losing almost, according to when you add up all the rulings, $500 million. Another little article here. This is an op-ed. I usually don't like op-eds because op-eds are opinion pieces as defined. And I'm not interested in opinion, but I just saw this a little bit fascinating. And it goes into the window of what's going on in Florida. And this op-ed sort of speaks a little bit to, and I don't know a lot about Florida politics, but I know that there's a lot of this push in Florida for, to attack things that are the education system and to push through stuff like anti-transgender and archaic voting rights laws and whatnot, voter suppression laws. And it says a woman's political fortunes kills DeSantis anti-woke junk bills. And it's just from the Miami Herald. It is a opinion piece by Fabiola Santiago. It's February 16th, 2024 again. And I'm just going to read a little bit from this because I just absolutely find this a little bit fascinating. And again, I don't particularly like op-eds because op-eds are not news, they're opinion. But it goes on to say, and this is the president of the Senate, and it says, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' anti-woke wars are falling apart in practice. Senate President Kathleen Passidomo, a Naples Republican, acknowledged that some Half a dozen culture war bills have been weaponized by politics. Surprise, surprise. From both the left and the right, in her opinion. But although the left certainly suffers from its own brand of excess, the DeSantis wars are about empowering the extreme right and having a cult like minority rule over the majority's lifestyle, health care, heritage, and voting rights. This week, Pasadomo said that she won't take up in the Senate anti-woke bills currently in limbo, either in committee or stalled after being passed by the House. So she effectively killed efforts to ban the LGBTQ flag from public buildings, ban pronouns, and protect Confederate monuments, among other measures. It's not that all of a sudden Pasadomo became a contentious objector to the harm being done by Florida women and gay, being done to the harm being done to Florida women and gay and trans children. It's that she has read the election year political tea leaves well. Quote, "Our process is not the Republican Party of Florida. We are the legislature. We make the laws," Pasadomo said. A little bit of a scandal that came up Black History Month. Another controversy around policy failure has unfolded about Black History Month after a parent posted on X, the former Twitter, that parental permission slip his daughter bought from school, and the NBC News story made it to national nightly broadcast. It describes a Black History Month event for which a parent signature was required. Quote, "Students will participate and listen to a book written by an African American. Those who enabled the legislation behind this know that bigoted parents won't sign the permission slip, so a book written by an African American will have a smaller audience. And as they shut down blacks simply because they're in power, far-right Republicans get to shove down our throats their partisan politics and lifestyles on our kids. And there won't be any permission slip required for that. Hoax," cried on X DeSantis Censor-in-Chief, Education Commissioner Manny Diaz Jr. Anger at Diaz and DeSantis grew, but instead of owning responsibility, they resorted to blaming the school principal, accusing her of a political ploy. Diaz and DeSantis also thought Americans were gullible enough to believe that book bans were a hoax. But the free expression advocacy organization PEN America was tracking the bans, finding that in Escambia County alone, 1,600 titles were taken off bookshelves. His power in the state is diminished. He was trying to resuscitate outrage and stir more anti-gay hate. But as luck would have it, an activist who also calls himself a journalist in the audience asked him a question. How does he reconcile his anti-gay agenda with his wearing of boots with heels to increase height? For once, DeSantis laughed but couldn't answer. Pasadomo's junk bill's kill was only one in a string of deserved bad days for the governor. So here it is, another win, or another own. This is actually, I would say, a self-own by the Republicans with respect to this. But it is important, and again, I just want to reiterate as I end today, I just want to reiterate the importance of being vigilant, being strong in this time, and having hope. Because it may seem like we're in dark times. It may seem like this is we're in a time where it's, almost unbeatable, that we can't win, that we're not going to be able to win. But I don't agree. I think, in fact, that we have a good opportunity to take back the things that we have been fighting for, to take back the House, the Senate, hold on to the presidency. I think on local and the state level, we need to take back these areas as well. And I think we have a good chance of doing that. And I am, like Simon Rosenberg, I am really looking forward to that. I'm thinking very positively going forward. So On that note, I am going to end today's show. Please like and subscribe to this video if you're on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, and send it to other folks. And also put in the comments, let me know what you think. Also visit our Mastodon at mastodon.vtip.me. I'm going to see if I can bring that up so that you can see that. There will be links to these articles in the Mastodon site so that you can take a look at it. Also, comment back. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you not agree? Let's get a dialogue going. Okay, until that time, I will see you on the next one. Take care.